Okay, and we're off. So, integrated marketing communications. We're going to look specifically at this question, because if you can answer this question, it will give you the tools to answer any question that's similar, I might say, in the exam. So, question is, compare and contrast traditional marketing models with integrated marketing communications. What are the differences and how does IMC attempt to be more effective? So we've already done in class a roadmap for the question, and that was this. So I've done a more detailed one right towards the end of this slide. So, and the other thing I will do is send you all a copy of this slide deck. But what we're going to do is go through from the question, looking at the intro, then all the different sections in a little bit more detail. So let's start off with the intro. Quite straightforward, this bit. We're looking at what the answer is going to do. So what you need to make sure that you do is refer to the main points of the question, because this shows that you understand what's required. So by, in your intro, saying what you're going to do, you're telling me that you understand the question. So I've just highlighted in red the things that you need to make mention of in your introduction. You need to explain that you're going to be talking about traditional marketing methods, explain that you're going to be talking about integrated marketing communications, the differences between the two, and most importantly how IMC attempts to be more effective, because that's the whole point of integrated marketing communications. It's, you know, we talked about the holistic all-around view of it, but it's there because it's perceived to be a improvement on traditional marketing methods. If you've got any questions just on that intro, raise your hand now. Okay, Sue's meter. Do you want to type it in, your question? Or if you want to, I can enable your microphone. Let's try that. Alright, Sue's meter, we can hear you now, so do you want to ask your question? Maybe not. Alright, so I'll disable your mic and you type it in, so we'll answer that when you get there. Alright, it was an accident, brilliant. Alright, so next bit, we've got the intro. Then, next bit of your answer, we start off by defining integrated marketing communications. So, what I'm going to point you towards now are the bits in the lecture notes from the IMC lecture that you can look at. So, we've got some definitions here: 360-degree branding, whole egg, seamless, yada yada yada. Joined up thinking, an approach to achieving the objectives of marketing campaign through a well-coordinated use of different promotional methods, etc., etc. We've also got a quote, sort of a type definition from Shim, and then a little more generic, where below the line activities support the above the line and vice versa. So IMC should include everything that the organisation and its people and brands communicate in their interaction with targets and publics, either deliberate or not. Now, all these references, I've got them at the bottom of the slide deck, So when you get that, you can actually go and do some further reading, because what I'm not doing today is going deep into what the theory, all the lecture materials are. That's not what this is about. This is about you developing your answers. So I'm pointing you in the direction of where they should be. Okay, so let's look at IMC in practice. Excuse me. So got 3 slides from the IMC lecture to show you here, and these are basically what marketing comms, well, integrated marketing comms look like, and different ways that you can use to describe them. So we got this from Picton and Broderick. Again, I'll give you the reference link at the bottom of the slide deck. Yes, Emily, traditional marketing methods come later, just bear with me. So we've got IMC in practice in four distinct areas. We've got public relations, personal selling, sales promotions, and advertising. So all these different media that we use to convey those 4 areas are all part of integrated marketing comms. Next diagram, well, next slide from the original slide deck is talking about the effectiveness of these in different areas. So we've got advertising, personal selling, sales promotion, and then we've also got direct marketing, public relations. And if you can see on the diagram, going bottom to top, you've got the levels of effectiveness, and on the bottom left to right you've got awareness, interest, desire, purchase, post-purchase, and that's part of the consumer purchase journey. So on the different parts of the consumer purchase journey, you've got the effectiveness of different marketing comms and how they work. And finally, these are just some little definitions of what IMC in practice actually looks like, and they're from Novak and Phelps. Now it's quite old, and the reason I've given you these is this was part of the development of integrated marketing communications, because this is, well, that was nearly 25 years ago, so it was when people were just starting to think about it, because it's not the newest of fields. Any questions on IMC in practice before I move on? Good, I'll take that. So next, IMC versus traditional marketing. So this is where Emily's bit about traditional methods. So I don't really want you to define them, I just want you to talk about them in terms of what the differences are, because they are quite similar. The difference, well, I'll go through this slide and I'll sort of explain the difference and how integrated marketing communications isn't necessarily anything wildly different. It's just a way of putting them all together. So give some examples of traditional marketing methods. So you can do what you want, and I'm not here to prescribe. These are just some examples that they were the first things that came to my mind when I was doing this slide deck yesterday. You've got junk mail, you've got billboards, you've got TV ads, you could have newspaper ads, you could have direct mail that's not junk mail. These are all traditional marketing methods. So it's about creating awareness, it's about a call to action. If you don't know what a call to action is, in any type of advertising, you need what is known as a call to action. And that is basically giving your consumer or your potential consumer something to do to respond to your advertising. And that may be ringing up for a brochure, it might be going on the website to look, it could be anything, but you're calling them to do something to get them further along in that consumer journey to purchase. So then when you talk about this section, you need to talk about, well, how do these fit into integrated marketing communications? And what's important to talk about is these things are still relevant, but you wouldn't necessarily just have a junk mail ad campaign or a billboard ad campaign or a campaign with for TV ads, radio ads or newspaper ads, things like that. Basically, rather than those all being distinct and separate entities, you'd package them up as a one holistic package, so that, and this is the most important bit, last bit of the slide, it's all fitting in with your branding and the holistic brand integrity that you're trying to develop. So I don't think there was only a couple of you went, but we were talking to the people that did the Paddington Christmas ad for Sainsbury's, and their whole campaign was based around the two brands, the Sainsbury's brand and the Paddington brand. Or was it John Lewis? I forget. No, it was Sainsbury's. And everything about all the messages they were sending out was not just about this is Sainsbury's, this is Paddington. Everything was coordinated so that the integrity of each of those brands was managed in whatever message was sent out, and they all coordinated together and worked together. So billboards work together at specific times with social media stuff, with YouTube release of the advert, with coordinated timings of ad buys with specific TV channels, that sort of stuff. Okay, so before we move on to your next section, I'm going to see if anyone's got any questions, because this might be the most challenging bit of the model answer for you. So if you've got a question, you can either raise your hand and I'll open up the mic for you, or you can type it in. No questions? Alright, that's good. It's quite easy to hide in these things, isn't it? So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of integrated marketing comms. And again, I'm going to point you to the lecture slides from the IMC session that we did during term time, and quite distinct, quite easy managed. We've got advantages here, so this is why IMC is good. You've got all those things that you can draw on. This is why IMC's got challenges. So those are things that you can draw out and tease out a discussion from the points in there. You might well think that because there's less on it, the disadvantages are harder, but they're actually not, because there's all these things about, is it ethically sound, is it an increasing form of social pollution, etc. And the reason for that is because you get such a wider distribution and a wider penetration of your consumer base because of things like social media, etc. That's where the social pollution comes in, and there's also all this stuff about Facebook data breaches, all that sort of stuff. So is the stuff that you're getting on your social media feeds, how have people got that data to be able to contact you, etc., etc. So there's possibilities for a reasonable reasonable discussion. Liv's just said, would you format this in a counter argument way? You could do. You can either have two little mini sections, or you could counteract your argument. It depends on where you're coming from. I would say the disadvantages, you might be looking more from a consumer standpoint, and the advantages you'd be looking for more a marketer standpoint. But putting those two together and against each other, yes, you could certainly do that. Yes, Emily. Emily's saying, is the Facebook breach a form of social pollution? Well, it is, but these forms of social pollution are not necessarily they're not necessarily a breach of any sort of data or anything, because those things are ubiquitous. We get stuff on our social media feeds all the time that relate directly to what we've been viewing in our browser and stuff. And the second part of your question, Emily, what's an example of ethically sound? Well, that depends on you and your moral compass, I guess. So you'd need to make that argument yourself. I mean, for me, I don't think anything that comes up on my Facebook feed is a direct result of, well, I've been and looked at it and I've been too lazy arse to go into my Facebook settings and stop all this, etc. We accept cookies all the time. Liv's asking about cookies. We accept them all the time because we don't want to miss out on that particular interaction. But that has an impact going forward by accepting those cookies. We keep saying that they're allowed to store that little bit of data for a while and then throw it back at us on social media or however these computer bots do it. So ethically sound depends on your own views and your own moral compass, I guess. Any questions before I go on to next slide? Good. Okay, so now this bit, brand identity and brand image, this is central to what you're writing about, because if we go back to, let's go back to the slide I need to go back to. This one here. Sorry, bear with me, it's a bit slower when you're right, this one here. So coming into the branding bit of your question, all these things are still relevant, but rather than separate campaigns, they're all part of a holistic brand campaign. So the branding's important because of that. Everything, what IMC does is protect the integrity of your brand and your brand message, but it also helps you to develop it as well. So it's really important that right at the end of your model answer you reinforce that branding and demonstrate that you know about branding and how it fits into the integrated marketing comms scenario. So there are probably about 15 slides in the branding bit that I gave to you, but these are the important ones that I really want you to refer to, but have a look at all the other ones too, just to give you an idea. So first things first, looking at brand identity and brand image. So we've got two logics. The identity is what we want to portray, and the image is what our consumers or potential consumers, that's what they construct. So we do try and develop our identity, but the image that consumers have of us is self-formed, i.e. they form it themselves. And this is why consumers have a bigger role in defining what our brand is, because the most important thing to us as marketers is what our brand means to other people. So we have to manage where we can what our identity depicts and how that's perceived by our audience. We've got some little definitions here. And again, this is from Picton and Broderick, so you'd need to go there to get these references on the right, the Gardner and Levy and the Chernigov one. But you'll be able to get those from Picton and Broderick, and I've given you the reference for that right at the end of this section. So, moving on. Then we talked. We were talking about interpretations of a brand. So, and these are constructs. The interpretation of brands are constructs formed by both us as a marketer and the consumer themselves. And we talked about, and we went through all 13 of these different interpretations of a brand, and how they actually work, what it actually means. So it was, I mean, you know, we know what a logo is, and we know that we see a logo. If it's a decent enough brand, we can see straight away what, you know, we know what that brand is. And we talked about emotions, how specific brands triggered emotions. Now those emotions aren't, oh I love it, oh I hate it, oh it's fantastic, oh it's absolutely crap. But there's still an emotional response, whether that's good, bad, indifferent. You know, there's still an emotional response to it. So, and if we look, number 7, brand as a personality. So that's where, you know, the logo ties in, and there are other things that tie in with that. But those are the different things you can talk about, emotional values. So it's not just about, with say an Apple Watch, it's not just about what the watch does, but it's also about what brand it is and what sort of person is going to have it. It's going to be someone tech savvy. It might be an early adopter or a innovator when we're looking at the diffusion curve and different stages of consumer adoption, symbolic device, lifestyle, all those sorts of things. So that's an important one for your integrated marketing comms, because that's the sort of reaction you want from your communication strategy. Gonna go back, hang on. I'm just waiting to see before I move on to that last little roadmap. Alright, okay. So, right, Emily's question, she's lost me a bit. 13 points relating to brand meant to be the advantages and the expected outcome of IMC. No. What I'm saying is, if we go back to this slide here, just bear with me while I load it. It's coming. Right, so we looked here, IMC versus traditional marketing, and we were saying that all these traditional market methods still relevant, but rather than separate campaigns, they're all part of a holistic brand campaign. So the main point of integrated marketing is because if you put it all together and do it holistically, that's what helps maintain your brand identity, your brand message. So everything you do is coordinated together so that it serves its best function for the brand, either in terms of the identity that you're trying to portray or the image that the consumer has in their perception of you. So, and the reason I want you to talk about branding at the end is because of this bit. IMC revolves centrally around maintaining, developing your brand and your brand integrity and staying on brand message. So it's important for you to demonstrate that you understand what brand image is, what brand identity is, and in terms of developing that, you can also talk about these different interpretations of brand. So the important ones I've talked about are brand as a personality, but you can also look at, let me see if I can get it up. Look, in the IMC lecture, there was where I went through all 13 of these, and just bear with me while I'm trying to load it. We went through all 13 of these different interpretations of brand, and we looked at shorthand. So shorthand was all the different things, all the communications, all the things you've read, all the experiences, all the interactions that you've had with a brand, all get reduced into that millisecond emotional response, and that's what that brand is. And it might be the logo that induces that emotion, or it might be something else. It might even just be using one of their products. So yes, Emily's saying there are ways to develop your brand further. Yes, they are. It's all about maintaining your brand, developing your brand, and having an influence on consumer perception of your brand, because it's identity is what you portray, and image is what the consumer perception is of you. Right, I'm just going to load, and I'm going to rattle through them really quickly. The interpretation of brand slides that I was talking about. I'm going to rattle through these really quickly, just to show you what I mean. Just loading, just bear with me. Right, okay, so if you remember, we had 13. That's these ones here. So we went through each one. So what I'm saying to you is have a look at your notes. But you've got what your logo is, so it's shape, colour, font, representation, all that sort of stuff. And talking about brand identities and stuff, I don't know if any of you have heard, but it's an urban myth that the Apple logo. I mean, we all know what the Apple logo is. It's an apple with a bite taken out of it. Now, the urban myth is that Alan Turing, who was part of the development team for the first ever computer, which was developed in Manchester, and you can go and see it at the Museum of Science and Industry. If you don't know Alan Turing, I'm hoping most of you would, but if you don't know who Alan Turing was, he was one of the code breakers during World War II, and he helped break loads of German code, which was instrumental in his winning the war. But he also had his challenges with society because he was gay, and at the time being gay was illegal. And he went through all sorts of traumas. He went through prison, he went through chemical castration, this and that. And there's a rumour that he sat on a bench in Canal Street in Manchester and committed suicide by eating an apple laced with cyanide. And that's why the Apple logo, because of his connection with the first ever computer, etc., etc., that's why the Apple logo is an apple with a bite taken out of it. Not necessarily true or not, but it's certainly not something that Apple are going to poo-poo too vehemently, because it gets people talking about their brand. So just answering Jasmine and Luke, how many of these interpretations? So basically the question is, how many of these 13 things would you use? Well, just a couple of them, but the important ones, I would say, is maybe your brand as a shorthand, and brand as a positioner, but certainly brand as a personality. If you don't mention any of the others of those 13, mention this brand as a personality one, because there's lots to go at there, and as I've already said, that's the one. It's the type of person you want to be, it's the personality of the brand, it's the symbolism of what that brand does. So it's like the difference between staying at the Premier Inn and staying at the Dorchester. That's the sort of distinctions you might want to make. Cluster of values, brand as a vision, added value, identity, image and relationship, all those things. I'm not going to go through those now, but I urge you to have a little look at them, and then we'll go from and then you can develop your answer from there. But if nothing else, use number 7 for your model answer. Use one of those. So let me just go back to the main slide deck. Just one more slide to go, guys, and then we'll take a break before the next session. Okay, just loading up your set. Alright, so we've been through these. This is just got a little bit more detail to it in terms of your answer, but this will sort of only make sense given the discussion that we've just had. But what I would do is make sure that you adhere to the main roadmap that we've already just been through, and then you can look at this to just develop little bits of it further. These are all the references that I refer to in the slide deck, and what I'll do is I will send these slide decks, this one and the service quality one, to you when I send you the link for the recording of the session as well. Right, Emily, Emily's just asking about conclusion. Well, probably conclusion's not the best word. we're looking more at a summary. So your summary will relate directly. Just type yes if it makes sense, Emily. Alright, cool. Okay, so that's the end of that first session. I'm going to stop the recording now.